No, wait, Matt. You only get out when the camera's on. Get out. Now you can get out. Yeah. That was in the summer of 2011, and that was the last day of production of my feature film, Regret. Although this wasn't the biggest production I've ever been involved with, it was certainly the most stressful one and the one that really changed my life. In this video, I'm going to tell you the story of how it all happened and how I got this film made and what it was like for me as a person and what it did to me, how it changed me, and how it ultimately became probably the most important thing I've ever done in my life so far. So if you have time, just grab a nice cup of hot cocoa, sit down, relax, and I'll tell you how it all happened, from script to production to post-production to distribution and all in between, and how it all happened. For that, we need to go back to 2010. So it's 2009, 2010, and I had just come off from directing a television show, 26 episodes of that television show, and that was around a 4 to 5 month shoot. And I had been taking like a break, so I didn't do anything for like 1 year or 1 year and a half. And one night I was with my girlfriend at the time, I remember this perfectly, and I was watching an old film I had made back in 2001, maybe 2002, something like that. And I was just rewatching the film with my girlfriend, and I said, you know what, this would actually make a decent feature film if I rewrote the script and da. But that's how it started. So I wrote a draft. In about 3 weeks, I had a first draft, and it was a pretty basic, run-of-the-mill slasher. You know, the guy goes crazy and kills everyone in the house. It's a very typical and a very marketable film, and this is important for later. And at this point, I had some money set aside to actually try and invest in making a project. And I decided, you know, this might just be enough. It's really not something, you know, it's really tight, but I can probably make it work with this budget if I you know, do a lot of jobs in editing, directing, producing, etc. Try to save money there, and I can shoot this maybe in the weekends, and I'll maybe even if it takes 6 months, I can do this. I'll just use my own gear and, you know, just try to stretch that budget that we had. Decided to take it to an old friend of mine with whom I had worked previously, very briefly, on a project a few years back before this. And I approached him, he was a writer, and I said, why don't you take a look at the script? We think there may be ways and we could improve it, blah, blah, blah. So he did take a look at it, he liked the script very much, and we decided to start working together on revising the script and making it as best as possible. And this process took around a year and a half. The film changed from being A to being B. So what I mean by this is not being better or worse. What I mean is being completely different, okay? So it went from being a run-of-the-mill slasher film with nothing more than that and just pure entertainment to a completely psychological thriller with tons and tons of layers, which was something I found absolutely fascinating. I thought, yeah, this is really great. The characters are so deep. Everything is so justified between, you know, all the scenes in the film and the characters' growth and the arc and this and that. It was just beautiful. We both fell in love with that, and that was a problem. At least for me, I lost sight of what I was doing when I was so enamored. Anyway, we got entranced in this world and these characters, and I was truly confident that this script was the best thing I had ever done. It would be, this film would be great. We're gonna send it to Sundance. We're gonna do all the great festivals. We're gonna be rich. We're gonna spend like nothing, and then we're gonna make millions, and, you know, and all these things and all these fantasies, you know, that you get completely taken over by in these stages. And then we finally got a few more investors in. I got my brother in with some money, and he got some people in as well, and so we managed to start production, and it was an absolute hell. It was when we had to start compromising and compromising and compromising, from casting to locations to gear that we could rent out and use and all that. I got a DP. He's a good friend of mine. We had worked together on the television show I had directed. So I got him involved, And I got all the key players involved, from, you know, first AD to PAs to production manager, etc. Anyway, the biggest problem we were facing was that the script was the entire script took place, almost the entire script took place in a house, in an apartment, preferably a house. It was just, for some reason, we just couldn't get a house. We spent months scouting for locations, and then we decided that maybe we should make it a hotel. My brother's wife's dad owned a hotel up north in Portugal, and they suggested, why don't we shoot there, because they need to test out the staff. It was about to open the hotel, and that sounded like an idea. And you see where I'm talking about compromises. So we're making compromises. We also had this big opening scene, which was a flashback. It was an extremely important scene, and we didn't even get to shoot that. So obviously all of these problems were coming up because of budgetary constraints. Anyways, it was compromise after compromise. So we couldn't get a house. We finally got a hotel. The hotel was hell to work with. And so the shoot began in May 2011. And we shot, and the very first scene we shot, everything went perfectly well. We shot at a restaurant. It was like a lunch scene between two characters. And it was the first day of work. It went very well. We shot that, and then we shot a couple of scenes later in the day in another location. But that's the memory I have, is that first day was that lunch scene. It went very well, and everyone was excited, and we started covering all the locations in the hotel that we could, because we knew we had to shoot some stuff out of the hotel. So we just basically spent the next 2 weeks doing all the scenes in the hotel, and it was a horrible shoot. I'll tell you why it was a horrible shoot. First of all, we were going to bed in the morning, so we were doing nights exclusively. So we would start around 6 p.m. and go all the way up to 8 a.m., 9 a.m. sometimes. Then we go to bed, wake up late afternoon, go back to work, and this was basically a 6-day week. But as a producer and director and basically maker of this film, I was behind every single decision, be it about the film itself or bureaucracies with insurances and blah, blah, blah. All these tiny, stupid problems were coming up. And it was absolute hell. And I didn't get any sleep, and I honestly don't know up until this day how I pulled that off. And you can see how devastated I am in some of these shots. When I first watched this clip, I was shocked at how I looked, because that was an expression of someone who's in deep pain. If you're ever in that position, you'll know what I mean by pain. I mean pressure and everything working against you when you're trying to do something, and everyone's counting on you to just do the best thing possible. So the pressure was huge. That's how the production went by, and of course we had a lot more compromises. We were a little behind schedule. We were about a day behind schedule, and so we had to push back some scenes. It was supposed to be the final confrontation between one of the bad guys and our main character, and that scene was supposed to have been shot at the hotel, not literally at the hotel, but around the hotel, a setting that would pass as somewhere else. So we pushed that to New York. So we had to shoot New York and Connecticut. We had the opportunity to shoot in New York and Connecticut, and the New York shoot was, let me put it this way, the Portugal shoot was as horrible as I said it was to you guys, between not sleeping at bad hours, having all these shit ton of bricks being laid on me every single day with decisions and this and that and problems to solve. The American shoot, the United States shoot, was even worse, because suddenly money was running out. Suddenly I had to compress about 35 to 40 minutes of usable footage in about 3 days, and I did it, but at a cost. We didn't shoot the intro we always wanted. That intro was completely scrapped. We trimmed down very important sequences to just bits and pieces that we could use in the edit. I cut where I could cut, and the last night, which was the opening shots of this video, the last night was chaos. It was, first of all, compliments to the entire crew and the DP and the first AD, the focus puller. She was amazing. Everyone did a stellar job, but it was so much pressure. We were shouting at each other to get this thing going because this was July and we had a bunch of night stuff to shoot, and we had begun about around 5 p.m., 6 p.m. So we had a little bit of dusk, so we had about 3 hours, 4 hours of light. Then we shot some stuff. Then we had, when it came night, around 9:30, 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m., 10 p.m., whatever, when it's completely night. So we had from 10 until maybe 4:30 a.m. before the sun and the lights started coming out. And this was a huge stress because we had so much stuff to shoot, and those 6 hours just, were really cutting it close. We were shouting at each other, do this, let's go, 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 blah, blah. And we were so focused, I was so focused, and we did it, we pulled it off. It was a nightmare, but we pulled it off. And I just remember when the very last shot was just a POV shot of a trunk of a car, and the light was already coming out, so we had to cover the entire area behind the camera and the trunk of the car with blankets, with negative fill, so we could pretend it was still dark. Anyway, that was the last shot, and I remember just yelling cut and just like shutting down completely and just walking away, emotionless, not feeling a thing. And one of the actors, about an hour and a half later, came up to me. I was sitting at a pool and having breakfast. This was early in the morning, about 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And he said to me, listen, Nuno, you didn't make your film, you made a film, and it's up to you to make the best film possible with what you've shot. And that's what I did. I cut the film at home, so I had to cut the entire film with proxies. I did that, and I went to a post-production company here in Lisbon, and I basically said, listen, I don't have any money, I have a film that needs to be color graded, and I'll give you a percentage of the cut if this film ever makes money. I don't know if we'll ever make any money at all, so it's completely up to you. This is what I have to offer. Will you please color grade my film in exchange for a percentage of the hypothetical profit? Surprisingly, they said yes, so I got my part of image completely solved, and then I had to do the same thing with post-production with sound, and I managed to do that with a friend of mine. He was able to use the studio in off hours, and so he did all the audio post-production, the sound mixing, etc. And that's how the film was completed in terms of post-production. But the important part here is what happened to me when I finished the film and what I thought about the film when I first cut it. And so, in my experience, when you finish a project, you love it for about 30 seconds after you're done with it, and then you start hating it and hating it and hating it and hating it. And I showed it to people. I did a small screening to family and friends and asked them to be objective about it, and impartial and honest opinions were duly appreciated. And the film didn't do well. And I was, oh my God, why didn't it do well? And then I went, and months passed. I knew I had to recut the film, so I did. And another friend, a good friend of mine, the producer whom with I had worked in the television show, he actually suggested me I do a little rearrangel of the storyline and start with this scene and do that. And I didn't follow through exactly what he said, but his first suggestion to start with this very specific scene, which is incidentally is the scene that you see that I was talking about earlier. The very first scene we shot ended up being one of the very first scenes in the film. Not the very first shot or moment, but the very first dialogue scene in the film. And that was a good suggestion, and I think that suggestion just propelled me to end up doing what I think is the best possible cut of that film given what we had shot. But the problem is, even as good as that cut is, given the material we had, it's still a bad film. And it's still a bad film for many reasons. But the most important reason is the script. And remember when I told you that I was completely overwhelmed with the characters' depth and this and that, and how deep and meaningful their arcs were, and blah blah blah. All that remains true and remained true when I watched the film. But what I realized is, as a film, it doesn't work, not even remotely. And that was a huge shock for me. That was a moment when I realized, obviously this wasn't a particular moment, this was a slow realization and acceptance of the truth that I had made a bad film. We barely got distribution because I went to Los Angeles and I met with some production reps and we struck a deal for the film, and we did that, and it was eventually picked up by a distribution company that did video on demand, so streaming services in the United States and Canada, and it remains today still in distribution. But of course, it didn't make any money at all. It doesn't get any attention at all because it didn't have any marketing. We didn't get into any festivals. We didn't get any recognition. We just basically got a crappy deal with a distribution company that went bankrupt and fell apart. So basically, I don't even know who's getting the money from the film at this point. It's just a big mess of a deal, and it's just the result of total and complete inexperience and total and complete lack of awareness of what and losing sight of what one's doing. And it turned out to be the most important experience in my life because it changed me. I wouldn't be the filmmaker I am today if I hadn't gone through that process of making a bad film and putting everything into it, your entire life into it, and having it fail that way is something very humbling. And you grow up and you start realizing, what you thought the world was 20 years ago is not what the world actually is. And this is something that most artists and people in the arts go through is, expectations versus reality. And my expectations were unrealistic, and realizing that was one of the biggest falls I ever took, and one of the biggest crashes I'm still recovering from 12 years later. So that's why I wanted to make this video, because regret was, ironically, with that title, you would have think that would be my biggest regret, but it's not. It's part of me. It's made me who I am today, and hopefully will keep shaping me in the years to come, professionally and personally. I suffered for a long time after the shoot and after the film was done. I developed a huge anxiety problem, which was debilitating, which was stopping me from going outside, from having a normal life, so to speak. And it took a long time to recover from that. For me, talking about this is reliving a truly traumatic experience that changed my life. I guess the big takeaway here is you have to work in your script, okay? You don't shoot the first draft, you don't shoot the second or third, you shoot the 15th draft. You shoot something that you know is working, that you've tested it extensively and shown it to people and got positive and productive feedback and worked for this for as long as you possibly can. That's the biggest takeaway, because had this script been good, in my case, the film could have been completely different. Script is paramount. Knowing what you're getting into is paramount. Having a good business plan is paramount. If you tend to put a lot of responsibility on your own hands just because you want to save some money, understand that that's going to take a toll on you. That's going to make things generally worse because you cannot think as well as you could if you didn't have that much to think of. So many things I could say about this story, and the impact it had on me. But I guess that's it, guys. I don't want to bore you anymore. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you've been through something similar, if you're planning to make a film, whatever. What are your struggles? I'd love to hear that. Thank you very much for watching once again. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much, and bye.
According to what I heard, this guy was very angry with you. He had some priors, public disturbances, grand theft auto, drugs, racketeering, you name it. This guy had a temper, all right.
He also raped a girl.
So you and Rachel Kovacs, your girlfriend, you had them up there for the weekend? So what, you had dinner? You stayed in with Miss Matthews and Miss Kovacs? And then what happened, Mr. Daniels?
Don't you ever do that again, you bitch! You stupid, stupid bitch! Now let's get one thing straight, Tommy, all right? This is between me and Kate. Got it?
Let him go now.
You just shut the fuck up!
Tom! Call the fucking ambulance, please!
Okay, we're not calling the police. Not right now. Not yet.
Are you out of your fucking mind, Tom?
I'm not going down for this. You got it? I was trying to help you, and we all know how that works. We all know how this fucked up system protects the innocent, don't we?
Tom?
No matter what happens, Mommy loves you, okay?
Aren't you afraid of the big bad wolf?
Let's just get out of my way.
I don't think so.
It's done?
Yes. Rachel, I am so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
You don't get it. You didn't kill him.